Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining today to join the 2025 Paul G. Hearne Emerging Leader Award webinar. I'm looking forward to talking with all of you today. Before we get started, my name is Christine Lau. My pronouns are she, her. I am an Asian woman with long black and brown hair, wearing a black sleeveless shirt and brown lipstick, and a window is behind me. I am the Senior Program Director for the American Association of People with Disabilities, or AAPD. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some housekeeping items. This webinar is recorded and will be available by the end of next week. The recording will include this entire webinar, as well as our PowerPoint slide, a transcript, and a summary document of all the Q&A that has been asked during this webinar, so that way you can view at your pace or whatever material that you're interested in. This will give you about 2.5 weeks before the application is due, so I'm hoping that today's webinar will be helpful for you all. We also have closed captioning and stream text available for this call. For closed captioning, you can click the CC at the bottom and it can pop up, or you can click stream text and a separate window will pop up, depending on your preference. We will have ASL interpreters today. They are spotlighted in this webinar. If you are joining on phone, we recommend joining on desktop because phone will switch between whoever is speaking, so the ASL interpreter might not pop up compared to a desktop where all the videos of everyone who is speaking and signing will be presented. We will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar for 15 minutes. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box only. The chat is available and it's open for you to interact with people if you want to, but it will not be monitored by AAPD to look for any of the questions. So again, please make sure that you put them in the Q&A box. Okay, so I'm going to talk through the agenda for today. So first, we're going to talk about the history of Paul Hearne, and then we'll talk about the timeline, a little bit about the application process, and then we have two wonderful past Hearne awardees who will share more of their experience so you can learn more from them. And then again, we have the Q&A at the end of this webinar. So our Hearne Award is named after Paul G. Hearne, who is a lifelong disability advocate and leader. His picture is on the right-hand side in black and white. He is a man with osteogenesis imperfecta with curly brown hair and a thick mustache. He is wearing a blazer and a tie. He established the One Break and the Door Foundation for employment of people with disabilities. While I do not know Paul Hearne personally, I have met many of his friends who love to share stories about him. It is clear that Paul Hearne had two main goals in his life. One was to set up a national association of people with disability, which he did. He was one of AAPD's co-founders, which is why we named this award in his honor. The second goal he had was to cultivate potential leaders to carry on the disability rights movement. This award recognized his second goal. So now we can talk about the timeline, which we know can move very quickly. There's a picture on here with a yellow diamond that's the deadline ahead. The application is due Tuesday, October 15th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Eastern. Please note the time zone, so this would be 2 p.m. Pacific. While the application closed, AAPD board members and past Hearne awardees will be reviewing your application and participating in the interview. This will take place from October through December. This can take a while, so please be patient with us as we move through this process. And then we give everyone a notification, regardless if you are recognized as a new awardee or not in December 2024. And then the 2 awardees will begin their project in January 2025 throughout the year. They will also be recognized at AAPD's National Community Event, which is fully virtual and will be in spring 2025. Okay, now let's talk about the application process, which has 5 different sections. So we are going to go through each one. But the main thing I want to preview for all of you is that we have a Google document where you can look at all of the material in one page instead of going through SurveyMonkey, because it is broken up into 5 different sections and you can't see them until you answer them. But in the Google document, you should be able to preview everything. You will be asking for applicant information, project information, your resume, letters of support, and demographics. As we talk about each of them and some tips, just please keep in mind that they might not all apply to you and they're intended to be helpful. All right, so we're going to go through each one. Section 1. You are eligible for the Hearne Award if you self-identify as an emerging leader and a person with a disability. Those are 2 main criteria in order to be eligible for this award. One question I often receive about emerging leader is, what does that mean? Emerging leader is not tied to age, education status, employment, specific experience, or involvement with the disability community. If you identify yourself as an emerging leader, then you are an emerging leader. We recognize that this can look different for a whole variety of people, so this is intentionally broad. You also do not need to disclose your disability. We also recognize that disability is a very personal thing, and we know that the experience can look a lot of different ways, including or not including a formal diagnosis. So if you self-identify as a person with a disability, then you are recognized, you are eligible for the award. You do not need to send any documentation or proof of disability to AAPD in the application process. When applying for this award, you can either apply as an individual, which means you by yourself, or you can apply as a group. There are a total of 4 people that can be in this group. All 4 people also must identify as an emerging leader or a person with a disability. There is a graphic with a check mark or a checklist, and a person is checking out the list. We will be asking for basic information, including your name, address, phone number, email, and if applicable, other people named in the group that might be applying for the award with you. Okay, section 2 is really the heart of this application. It's going to talk about the project information. This is where reviewers get to learn the most about you and your application. So make sure that your project relates to AAPD's mission or some of the work that we do. Our mission is very broad, so they can encapsulate a lot of different things, but we are focused on continuing our disability movement forward. We welcome any new ideas. Part of the reason why we do this award is an opportunity to hear from you all and hear about the ideas that you have. That being said, please make sure that you take the time to explain your ideas. Like I mentioned, our reviewers will have a different background, different areas of expertise. One might have background in housing, one might have background in policy, one might have background in technology, but everyone is going to be reading your application. So you want to make sure that you are sharing information that can get all of us on the same page. If you have specifics related to your project, it is helpful. Specifics can include if you have any ideas about what activities you are doing, how many people you want to involve, why you're doing it. So an example of what not to do will be like, I want to build a community of people in Washington, D.C. That's very broad and doesn't include a lot of specific. So a more specific example would be, I want to build a community of 30 people who are all deaf to be able to access medium and sign language. This narrows down the focus, lets me know what kind of things you're doing, who it's for, how you're planning on doing it, and so forth. So again, please preview the Word document. It has all the essay questions on there, so that way you can kind of see how you can build up your essay your essay answer to each question. If you find that you still have questions, please feel free to ask them at the end of this webinar, or you can email me at any time, and I'm happy to talk through the ideas with you so you can learn more. I want to make sure that you feel supported throughout this application process. When you are looking at the essay questions, you might recognize that the different essays will have different word counts. If there's a higher word count, this means there's a higher score associated with that essay. So you want to pay more close attention or spend more time on those questions. Let's see. So in this, one of our essay questions talked about an overview question. This will give us a broader understanding of your project. Then there's a second question in there that asks about specific outcomes and activities. You want to focus on the activities that you will be doing in 2025 if you receive the award. The reason why is sometimes when you share an overview of like a 5-year plan, we don't know where you are in that 5-year plan. And so we have to follow up question to help specifically narrow down what you will be focusing in 2025. A year goes by really quick. So to make sure that you're thinking month by month and what is feasible for you to do in 1 year. Okay, I lost track of my mouse. Okay. Some questions that I commonly receive throughout that I just want to answer. People ask, does it have to be a brand new project? No, it does not. You could have been working on this project for the last 2 years and you're ready to take it to the next step. You can do that. If you have been working on your project for a long time, but you're focused on one specific initiative, we can definitely support that. And then we have a question about funding in the essay question. And some people say, I'm not sure how much things cost. Is it okay to share broad ideas of how I want to use the funding? The answer is yes. For example, you can say, I want to have 5 ASL interpreters for this event. I want to have coach and so forth. Do you have an idea of the things that you would like to spend money on? But it's okay if you don't have the cost figured out yet, because AAPD will help you with that as you are going through your Hearne Award project. All right, so related to your project, AAPD gives a total of $10,000. You will receive $7,500 for the project, and then $2,500 for your contribution to the community. There's a graphic on here that includes a calculator, some paper, and some dollar bills. So when you're thinking of your project, $7,500 can be used for anything related to the project, and that is typically given to you in the first quarter of 2025. The remaining $2,500 is typically given at the end of the year, and you can use it however you want to, and that is up to you. If you are a part of the group, the $2,500 will be split among the group, however you all decide that you want to split it. That is up to your discretion. One thing I do want to make sure that AAPD can disperse or fund wherever you choose. The two main options that we have is if you are partnered with a 501c3, whether you started your own 501c3 or you have a fiscal intermediary, meaning that you have a partner who is willing to accept the fund on your behalf. Because of a conflict of interest, because AAPD is giving you the fund, we cannot serve as the fiscal intermediary because we are the ones giving you the fund. So you will have to look for a different organization. The second option is we can give the fund directly to you. If it is directly to you, it will be counted as taxable income. You will receive a 1099 the following year in January 2026. And so you might want to consider taxes as part of your budget planning. We recommend talking to your financial advisor if this may have impact to your taxes or benefits or so forth before deciding where the funding will go to. All right, so section 3 in our application is your resume. I want to make it clear, I am 100% positive all of you have really great ideas and you have great experience to back it up. I want you to think of your experience very broadly. It is not about the number of internships you've had or jobs that you've had. It could really be anything that is including unpaid and paid work. It can also include things that you learned in class or things that you've done for your club or things like that. I encourage you to put it on your resume because it helps us learn about who you are and what experience you bring. So if you don't put anything in there, then it makes it harder for us to get to know you. So again, it can include a variety of experiences such as volunteer, internship, temporary work, part-time work, or full-time work. If you are applying as a group, we need resumes of every single member of the group. Next is going to focus on your letters of support. We require 2 of them. Please pick someone who can speak to your leadership skills and your project. We want this person to sing your praises and speak very well to the person that you are. We read these letters as another opportunity to get to know you. And so if it is a broad letter or they said, I met this person 1 month ago, it's also going to make it harder for the review committee to get to know you. They should be able to speak specifically of why you are the most qualified person to lead the project that you are proposing. A reminder is the conflict of interest. Board members, AAPD staff, or any relative of the individual are not able to write you a letter of recommendation. Section 5 is demographics. It is optional. It helps AAPD get a better sense of our outreach and making sure that we're reaching out to diverse communities. Our questions include, but not limited to, race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and disability. So those are our 5 sections of our application. Again, there's a Google document where you can preview everything if needed. This webinar is recorded in case you want to review any of the information I shared along with the transcript, the slides, and then I will be putting together a Q&A at the end. But now I would like to switch it over so you all can hear from our past Hearne awardees. We will hear from Jennifer Lee first, and then Kiana will join us afterwards. They will both answer some questions about the project, and then you will have a chance to ask them questions both in the Q&A box and during the live Q&A part of the webinar. So I am excited to have Jennifer go first, and here she is. So Jennifer was the 2023 Hearne awardee, and I'm going to ask her to do a brief introduction of her name, pronouns, and give an image description along with a brief summary of the project that you worked on.
This is Jennifer speaking. Thank you so much, Christine. As she just mentioned, my name is Jennifer Lee. I use she, her pronouns. And for a brief image description, the image on the screen shows an Asian American woman with medium length black hair, smiling with red flowers in the background. Today on the video screen, still medium length black hair and wearing a navy dress. I'm so pleased to be here with you all today. As she mentioned, my project for the Hearne Award in 2023 was for the Asian Americans with Disabilities Initiative, otherwise known as AADI. For those who don't know, I also served as an AAPD intern back in 2021, and so feeling really grateful to be back with you here all today.
Great, thank you. Jen, could you share a little bit of what you proposed at the Hearne Award in terms of like the specific project that you worked on?
Absolutely. So in terms of the 2023 Hearne Award, the Asian Americans with Disabilities Initiative was an already existing 501c3 nonprofit organization prior to having applied for the Hearne. However, part of the application process meant doing a lot of introspection and asking myself, in what ways can we grow the organization in a way that's meaningful and really intentional for growing in the disability community? I'll be candid in saying that it was not my first time applying for the Hearne Award. And I think the multiple iterations of having to apply for the application process forced me to really evaluate for what I wanted to contribute to our community. And so for this particular application process, my focus was looking at how we could expand the ways in which we're reaching the diversity of the disabled Asian American community. This meant hosting community events that targeted folks beyond what people might think of as the Asian diaspora, looking at folks who were South Asian, Southeast Asian, from all sorts across the Asian American diaspora, recognizing that Asian Americans are not a monolith. But then, even further, we looked at how we can be more inclusive in the kinds of disabilities that we were targeting within our organization. We had done a lot of community events in the past on a virtual level, but our goal through the Hearne Award was to then provide opportunities to meet in person or to provide hybrid opportunities to increase our community even further. As I'll speak on to later throughout this webinar, we were not without our challenges. We ended up pivoting several times in terms of how we wanted to really devote our funding and energy during the Hearne Award tenure. And so happy to speak more about that as needed. Back to you, Christine.
Thank you. I know that a lot of applicants often worry that they have to have something really developed or focused. How did you decide what you proposed was feasible within 1 year?
Yeah. Here, I think I would love to echo Christine's earlier statements that a year passes by so quickly. I certainly was ambitious in what I had laid out in my original year-long plan for the Hearne Award. And what I realized quickly is that AAPD sets you up to succeed in that there's a quarterly plan to understand how exactly we are reaching goals and understanding what we want from the Hearne Award experience. Throughout the course of the year, I had to learn to really narrow the scope for what I wanted to accomplish. I originally had intentions to create a nationwide network that would have taken, honestly, several team members full time to try and pull off. But with AAPD's guidance, we were able to narrow this scope and recognize that if we're able to host a few events, if we're able to call together smaller pockets of regional communities with disabled people of color, then that is a success even in our own book. And so part of what this process looked like was spending the first quarter working together with Christine, Maria, and the amazing AAPD team to then call out exactly what we were looking for in terms of a 1 year plan. We later realized that rather than trying to create a national network and start from scratch, there were ways that we could build upon the existing infrastructure to expand what we were able to offer to a larger audience. And that in and of itself was able to fulfill what we had set out to do in the first place, which is to really reach a more diverse audience to begin with. I think as the year even went on, we realized that sometimes there's also external factors that are out of our control, whether it was our personal lives, whether it was work-life balance, or even just other stakeholders not being available in the way that it used to. Part of what we had originally worked on was working with a broader museum entity to try and create a disabled Asian American exhibit. But we had to pivot around Q3, recognizing that what was originally asked for in that space could then be revamped to look at how we can serve a different institution, looking at different exhibits, and looking for various vessels in which we can create value for the disabled stakeholder community. And so these are just a few examples for how we were able to really create space for the different challenges and the different twists and turns that life gives us. And also, I want to underscore the kind of support that one receives from AAPD from an organizational and structural perspective.
Thank you, Joanne. The one thing I really want to highlight from what Joanne said is sometimes life gets in the way and plans change for sure. So I want our applicants to know that it's okay if things change, or I don't want there to be a lot of pressure. I have to do everything right and I must be ready to do everything right when you are Hearne Awardee. As Jen mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration between AAPD and the Hearne Awardee that we work together. And our ultimate goal is that we want you to be able to succeed in this project. And that can look in so many different ways. John, I wanted to ask, what were some things you would have done differently during your year at the Hearne Awardee, looking back?
I think this is a fantastic question, and thinking around how we can always pivot and create more opportunities for the ways in which we can grow and improve even within our own community. I think for me, it would have been being more brutally honest with myself earlier in the process. I think that as the course of the year goes on, the way in which the Hearne Award is structured is that by Q4, the project has already been wrapped up. We are beginning to submit finalist reports and thinking of the ways to build a broader narrative around what we have accomplished throughout that scholarship tenure. And so for me, what I would do differently is setting out a realistic and narrow scope that I wanted to accomplish, whether that was in the form of a specific event to happen within Q3, whether that was in form of a broader proposal that would then feed into the work that we did. And I think that one of the things that I was most grateful for was the support of the broader organization. I'll flag that one of the wonderful things that the organization has done is provide mentorship opportunities. So thinking about ways in which I was able to meet other change makers in the space and be having that conversation be facilitated by the AAPD staff was such a game changer. And it was through these conversations that were built into the Hearne Awardee application process that allowed me to then meet with other change makers in the space and understand what were those practices that made for an efficient and streamlined 501c3 in the space that I was in. And I want to note, similar to what Christine was saying, that this looks different for everybody depending on what that project looks like and who the appropriate stakeholders are. And so being able to learn from those around us and to be in community, in a sense, we are being interdependent on one another as well for being able to grow from the advice that we gain. And so I think if there were to be anything to be done differently, it would have been to think ahead, be more realistic and narrow in scope, even as early as in the application process, and then to also be more flexible, especially having learned new information and learning new faces and advice as the year went on.
Thank you, John. You touched on this a little bit, but I just wanted to see if you wanted to add on to this. Is what were some new skills or connections that you gained at the Hearne Awardee?
I think this is a fantastic question. I think skills and connections go such a long way because what I didn't realize at the time of becoming an awardee was that AAPD is making the decision to invest in you, not just as an advocate and as a leader, but also as a person. And I think it's this relationship that is cultivated throughout the year that is so special and really sets this opportunity aside from other funding opportunities within the space. We all know that there have to be more opportunities for the disability community community to be involved in the philanthropic decision making. But in this particular case, the skill and the connections that I learned was being able to meet regularly, quarterly with a team that really cared about my well-being and really cared about being there for me. I think that was a mindset shift. Instead of thinking about what I had to report back, I think thinking about the ways in which we're able to build community and be intentional about the ways that we're actually planning forward goes an incredibly long way. And for me, I think being able to work in community and in tandem with other stakeholders continued to allow for us to build together and to be flexible in the ways in which we're building off one another. In terms of a tangible skill set gained, I would say that the AAPD staff expect a quarterly report from the Hearne Award once they are awarded this funding. And so having that accountability mechanism was actually a really powerful way for me to sit down every few months and really think about the progress that I made and reflect on whether I thought a goal was actually within reach or not. And so both in my professional, but also in my personal life, I found that going through this application process before the award and also during the award season itself allowed me to reap immense harvests, and I couldn't be more grateful to the team for that opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you for taking the time to share your experience. I just want to remind folks that we will have a Q&A at the end, and Jen will come back if there are any other questions. So thank you, Jen, and then we are going to move on to our second Hearne awardee, who is here with us, Kiana. Hi, Kiana. So good to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could give a brief introduction of your name, your pronouns, and an image description.
Say that last part again.
If you could share your name, your pronouns, and an image description.
Oh, yes. Okay, so I'm Kiana. Pronoun she, her, hers. Image description is a Black woman with her hair up in a bun and bangs and a white shirt.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering if you could share a brief summary of the project that you worked on when you were a Hearne awardee in 2022.
Yeah, so back in 2022, I authored a children's book called Food Friendly, and the goal of the book is to educate children and their parents, and as well as educational systems about the importance of food allergy awareness within kids, because I feel like there's a lot of food allergy bullying, misconceptions, and things of that nature that I experienced growing up with a severe nut allergy. And so my goal was to be able to inform and educate um, those in the community through a book. But initially, when I applied to the fellowship, I applied with the intention of making an animated short film. And so I think that's the beautiful thing of becoming a Hearne Awardee is like your project will evolve and develop, as things go on.
Yeah, this is Christine. Kiana, do you want to speak more to that? Because sometimes I want to remind our applicants that sometimes life can get in the way or plans change, and it's okay if they don't go as planned. So I wanted to know if you could share more about how you decided to pivot from the animation to the children's book.
Sorry, give me one moment.
Okay. We are going to wait a minute for Kiana to get back, but this is the part that I really want to emphasize to all of our applicants is that when we are reviewing your application, we are looking for the potential of the idea. We are not necessarily looking at it for you to carry out through the project. And then if you don't do the project as planned, that we are going to take the money back or anything like that. Once we give you the money in the beginning of the quarter, we are working with you throughout the year to make sure that we can meet the goals of your project and knowing that there's many different ways to achieve the goal. While Kiana is relocating to find a different place, I am going to look at the Q&A. One person asked if you can update your application once you have submitted it. The way our application portal works is that once you submit it, it is the final copy. However, if you really need to make some last minute changes or you accidentally uploaded the wrong document or something, please resubmit your entire application and then email me so we know which application to look at. Okay, I think we have Kiana back, so I'm just gonna go ahead and repeat the question that I want to remind people that sometimes plans change or like can get in the way. So I wanted to know if you could share more about how you pivoted from the animation to the children's book and what your thought process was behind that.
Yeah, so there are a lot of external factors. One of the largest ones being COVID. So my resources and access kind of changed because I also was in partnership with a nonprofit organization that was the face of food allergies. So in collaboration with them, their organization was going through a lot of different changes with COVID, budget cuts and restrictions of that nature. So I just felt as though the timeline, and then also noticing the timeline, like a year is actually very quick and very short, and animation takes a long time and it's rather expensive. And so to make the most out of my time as a Hearne Awardee and my partnership with AAPD, I just felt like it made more sense to pivot to a children's book as a much faster process and most cost effective way to do that as well. And so I think also when you look at the quarterly system and like what you can realistically get done in each quarter, that kind of helps mold what your experience as a Hearne Awardee will be, because a year is a quick amount of time. And so you want to be able to accomplish something that's realistic. So you want your goal to be tangible within that year and not something too wide scope that it doesn't get done. And not to say that you can't continue to work on your project or be passionate about it after the fact, but in terms of maximizing your partnership and the resources you have while in the program, it's important that your goal is actually something that can be achieved within the year. So that was my biggest learning curve, is that I realized quickly on that it was too big and to shrink it down. And yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to know if you could reflect back on your Hearne Award year. Was there anything that you would have done differently?
Truthfully, I don't think there is anything I would have done differently. I feel like it was a really great and fun experience. I think my biggest asset is being a strong communicator. So I was quick to email Christine or hop on the Zoom with the team and talk through my thought process. And I think just keeping everybody abreast into like what I had going on, what issues I was coming up to or facing, and not being afraid to ask for help. You don't have to wait until your quarterly call to reach out. Like if something comes up, the more you communicate and the more people understand where you're at in the process, they're able to make connections and offer resources. And I also feel like, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but it was comforting to know that things were still getting done, in the interim before the meetings and knowing where I was at with things. So I think reflecting on my experience, I was really happy that I was as overly communicative as I was, and grateful that I wasn't scared to ask for help or ask for additional opinions and what they thought, because it was a very unique experience. So there was no right or wrong way, and I feel like you're really the person spearheading, how it goes. And so it's really on you to get, what you put in is what you get out. So to make the most of the experience and to be vocal with whatever you have going on.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely want to echo what Kiana said, that she was a great communicator in between our quarterly calls, and they were definitely helpful for AAPD, because even when Kiana, I think it was during in between calls that Kiana had let me know that she was going to switch from an animation to a children's book. So this allowed AAPD to focus their efforts in finding like a mentor or someone who had more experience writing children's books than animation. So that way we were able to make the calls more specific to where Kiana was at her project. And I think that was also a good example of that AAPD doesn't only communicate with you during quarterly calls. We are open to communicating with you throughout the year as often as the project calls for it. One of my last questions for you, Kiana, is what were some new skills or connections that you gained at the Hearne Award?
I necessarily gained a new skill. I feel like I just gained a new perspective and outlook in terms of, you know, advocacy. Like I really learned that putting yourself in position with other people who agree or equally as passionate on whatever the issue is that you're trying to advocate for can really make change. And if you have a clear vision, and if you align yourself with people who also support that message or that goal, a lot of things can get done. And like, just instead of looking at obstacles as an obstacle, you can just look at it as like a different direction that you need to take to get to where you need to go. Because if I was super laser focused on it via animated film, that would have ultimately delayed the process, and I ended up with a faster result and still with the same outcome of being able to inform and educate people about food allergies through storytelling. So I feel like when you just focus and, kind of open your mind up to the issue at hand, which is, public advocacy and disability inclusion, when you really hone in on that passion, then it kind of opens your mind up to being able to see all the different routes that you can take to get there. And just being open to talking to people and all different types of resources, because we never know how each person's unique experience can end up funneling into a project and helping you out in the long run. So I feel like I just learned more about myself and teamwork and collaboration and, how one singular person idea can be a change maker, but also the importance of, creating a team and galvanizing with people and collaborating can have a huge impact. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity and all the people I met along the way.
Thank you, Kiana. We're grateful for you and the work that you have. I have Kiana's food friendly book in my office, and I'm always very proud to show it to anyone who comes by and visit. So Kiana, thank you for sharing your experience with us. For everyone on the webinar, I encourage you to drop your questions in the Q&A box. If you have any questions for Kiana or John, they are both here and available to answer any questions that you have, especially since both of them have experience going through this process. I am going to go through the Q&A, and then Kiana and John, I will let you know if there's one that I think might be helpful to have your input on there. All right, let me take a look here. One person asked, should the letters of support be from people other than the applicants who will collaborate on the project? The answer is yes and no. I think it depends on if you think that a person who is collaborating with you will be able to share more insight on your project, but it is not necessarily a requirement. Kiana or John, I don't know if you want to share insight on who you chose to write for your letters of support.
Well, I think for one of my letters of support, as somebody from Disabilities, speak through my time as an intern there. And I think that was, for me, that made the most sense because I actually found out about the opportunity through their job board and their email distro. But then it also could speak to my sensibilities as like how I am a disability advocate and what I've done for that organization. And so I feel like the letter of support should definitely harp on key parts of who you are that would make you a strong candidate for the award.
This is Jennifer speaking. I was just going to add on to that. My letters had come from an external third party who worked in the disability rights space, but he was actually my AAPD mentor back in 2021. And so he had known me for several years at that time. And I think that helped in really just speaking to character and speaking to a vision for the future. And the second letter came from a peer who had worked on these issues with me on my project and was very familiar with what I wanted to work on. And so I think having someone who could speak to my character and my vision, but then someone who could also speak to the quality of work and my tangible items, I think helped a lot.
Thank you both. Okay, the next question I see is, can the project be focused on one segment of the disability community, such as a specific diagnosis? And the answer is yes, and I think 200 words actually reflect that well. Kiana focused on specifically food allergy, and then John focused on a specific segment of the disability community, which is AAPI community. So you can look at this in a variety of different ways. I believe in the past, we have also had specific age group. We have also had specific religion group. We have had specific areas of interest, or like disabled people who were interested in journalism and so forth. And when I write up the document that summarizes all the questions, I will be sure to link some specific pattern worthy to have had a more specific focus on the project. Let's see. A person asked if a letter of reference can come from previous, not current AAPD board members, and the answer is yes. Someone asked how the award is divided among a group. So the 7,500 is for the project. So we're assuming that everyone in your group will be working on that project. The 2,500 is up to the group. Some people have split it evenly among the number of people in the group. Some people decided to just add the 2,500 back to the project fund. So the total is up to 10,000. I think those are the two most common ways that I see it, but it is up to the discretion of the group. All right, let's see. Okay, a question asks, can projects or initiatives that are still in the idea phase be eligible? Must applicants already have a board or team established to be eligible to apply? Do applicants have to have their project or initiative incorporated in a certain way, such as a 501c3 for a nonprofit or LLC for business? With specific resources and assistance that AAPD provide awardees with. So there's a couple of questions in here that I'll answer, and then I'll ask our two awardees to see if they want to talk more about specific assistance. You do not need to have an established 501c3. A lot of our Hearne awardees are in the process of establishing a 501c3 when they are with us, or they decided that they felt confident enough in their project that they started a 501c3 after the Hearne Award. But I think the thing to consider is when we give you the 7,500 for the project fund, is how is that funding going to be used? Some people use the 7,500 to go through the 501c3 process because there's some financial obligation as part of it. But you do not need to have everything set up before you get to that point. You also asked for specific resources and assistance that AAPD provide awardees with, and I don't know if Tiana or Duran want to touch on this briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it earlier. You did put me in touch with other children's book authors and just authors in general. I also just feel like it was important because this is a passion project of mine and I was solo. I didn't have a partner with this. So it was just important for me to have a team to do this. So you all were able to provide marketing, strategy, going on timeline, when it makes most sense to do this, to release that. So I think those were like the crucial things that helped me as well. I'm trying to think what else. Um, yeah, helped me having a team to actually talk through things and connecting with the resources that you are and having access to your community of people.
I think we lost your audio for a little bit at the end, Kiana.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I think we can hear you a little bit better now. I don't know if you want to say the last sentence. We said that something about marketing and timeline because you didn't have like a formal partnership and this was helpful.
That's essentially what I
Okay.
said. Also having access to all resources and community for marketing and strategy.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I caught everything. Jen, did you want to add on more?
I would just underscore that the AAPD network is so vast and it is so powerful. I think if there's anybody in the community that folks want to meet, chances are that AAPD has a way for you to meet them. And for me, I think this was so powerful, and not only being connected to heroes of mine through the Hearne Award network, but also being invited to the AAPD Gala or being invited to meet other former Hearne awardees. I continue to be so impressed by what former Hearne awardees have gone out to do. And I think meeting those who won in 2010, who won even earlier, have left such a deep impression on me that this is not a one-time funding opportunity, but rather that we are joining a really broad and amazing network of disabled advocates who are trying really to make an effort to make the world a better and more inclusive space.
Thank you both. Okay, another person wrote, regarding the project information, I understand that the timeline as a whole will be a year to complete the project. I am wondering whether AAPD is more interested in projects that have a longer vision, say 5 years, with this project being the launching point, or would AAPD prefer projects that are more one-off? In other words, projects focused on long-term change making or short and able to be finished in the 1-year time frame. I think Hearne awardees represent a large spectrum of this. I think people typically propose a long-term project, and AAPD does help with awardee sustainability towards the later half of the year, either connecting you to other philanthropies or foundations that might be able to support your project in the long term. But we have had previous applications and awards that focused on a very specific event, whether it was like an art show that was in collaboration with the community, or they thought it was going to be a one-time thing, but then because it was a big success, they ended up continuing it for future years. So I hope that answers your question. I know that's not a very concrete answer, but the answer is we accept both types of projects. Okay, let me see. Someone asked for the 7,500 to work on the project. Can these funds be used to pay ourselves for the labor on the project? I think this question has come up before, and I think we will probably need to talk more about what this looks like, because the intent is that the 2,500 that is given at the end of the year is to recognize the work that you have done. And typically when people say they want to pay themselves for the labor of the project they are doing, they also end up working on things that also need money to be spent. Like if they say, I want to pay myself for working on putting together an event, but you are also paying for like a space fee, you're paying for accommodations, you're paying for catering, so it almost ends up being on other line items, but this is a conversation that we would have more during the interview round. And if you're able to share more thoughts on that in the essay question, we are open to it too. Okay, I think we have one more question for time. Let's see. There are specific types of projects that qualify, such as policy development projects versus community engagement projects. We have had a wide range of projects. There are no specific types. We have had people make it into a scholarship fund for other people to benefit from this award. We have had people like Hearne's project that's very focused on developing a book. And then Kiana, after her Hearne Award, have focused on more of the marketing and outreach to get the book out there. There are people like John's project that focused on community engagement. We have also had, I'm trying to think of other projects. We have had nonprofit related projects. This year, we have a medical nonprofit that is student-led. And then we have like a poetry collective as our second project for the Hearne Awards this year. So it can be a wide range of projects, and I hope that gives you all more encouragement that any idea is welcomed at AAPD, and we are looking for a wide range of ideas to connect with our community, and we know that the disability community is involved in a lot of different areas, that there's really no limitation on what kind of project that we're interested in. Okay, so we are about done. I know that I did not get to answer everybody's question. I will save the Q&A and type it up in the summary document, so your question will be answered there. Or I may follow up with you via email if I feel like it's a very specific question that is related to you. But I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join this webinar, and I especially want to give a big thanks to Kiana and Jennifer for taking the time to share your expertise with our audience today. And I hope that everyone has a great rest of their evening. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at programs@aapd.com. Again, the webinar is recorded. We will follow up with all the materials by the end of next week. All right, thank you, and I hope everyone had a great evening. Bye.